Hello folks and welcome back. We are taking a look at the top 16 match from Vancouver Regionals that happened a couple of weekends ago. Looking at the VGC gameplay here. We're going to go ahead and switch on over. We got some pretty big names here. Raghav Malaviya and James Baek here. Both of these are pretty well decorated players, quite successful throughout their time in VGC, and they have some pretty fun strategies here. Ogerpon, Cornerstone, Masked, Heatran, Incineroar, Screamtail, Terrapagos, and Rillaboom for Raghav here. It is the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon with a pretty, standard moveset of Ivy Cultural, Follow Me, Power Whip, and Spiky Shield. Heatran here, Terra Fairy. We've seen Heatran become consistently more popular here. It does pretty well into things like Miraidon and both the Calyrexes. It's a little bit vulnerable to high horsepower ground type moves, as well as opposing Koraidons, although it does get a pretty big boost from the sun, especially using that Magma Storm. It has Heavy Slam, Terra Blast, and Protect. It's also a good answer into Zamazenta. Screamtail here is, again, more popular since EUIC. Terra Grass with Boost Energy, Dazzling Gleam, Encore Disable, and Protect. Incineroar is pretty standard. Terra Ghost, Rocky Helmet, Fake Out, Will-O-Wisp, Parting Shot, and Knockoff. Notably no Flare Blitz. A lot of times that's the other option that you'll see. Terrapagos here is a bulkier one. We haven't really seen Choice Specs Terrapagos in a while. Leftovers, Terra Starstorm, Calm Mind, Substitute, and Protect. And then finally Rillaboom with that Terra Grass to boost up its Grass type damage. Fake Out, Grassy Glide, Wood Hammer, and U-Turn. Pretty standard movesets all around, save for that Dazzling Gleam on the Screamtail. Now, James Baek here. We've seen James a couple of times and already on stream once this tournament. Calyrex, Shadow Rider, pretty standard Terra Fairy, Spell Tag, Astral Brush, Psychic, Nasty Plot, and Protect. Clefairy here as well with the Terra Grass, Icy Wind, Follow Me, Heal Pulse, and Protect to heal up your Calyrex, Shadow Rider, as well as any of your other offensive threats. Rillaboom here is Terra Fire along with the standard moveset. Mian Xiao, Terra Ghost, Focus Sash lets it be on the field for a little bit longer, and it also has some fun moves with Close Combat, Fake Out, Taunt, and Wide Guard. Wide Guard putting in a lot of work, especially if this Terrapagos terastallizes. Wide Guard can do quite a bit. Taunt is also good against Terrapagos, Fake Out, in Close Combat. All really, really good moves. I wouldn't be surprised to see Mian Xiao make an appearance in this set. Urshifu, Rapid Strike here with a Choice Scarf. That's been really, really popular in this tournament, at least on stream so far, with a full attacking moveset, save for Rain Dance at the tail end there, and then a Terra Ghost, Incineroar, Safety Goggles, Knockoff, Will-O-Wisp, Fake Out, and Parting Shot. The four pretty standard moves that we have seen recently, with Safety Goggles as the choice item to maneuver around some Amoonguss shenanigans. So we have some fun techs here for both players. I'm really, really excited to see more Mian Xiao in action for James. Mian Xiao is one of my favorite Pokemon, not like of all time, but it's a really interesting Pokemon that we don't see a lot. It's a great Fake Out user. Close Combat is a phenomenal move. It can get a lot of work done. And Mian Xiao is also very, very speedy, meaning that Taunt can make a huge, huge difference, and we see it here. Raghav has brought the Incineroar as well as the Terrapagos, and James Baek has brought out the Calyrex, Shadow Rider, and the Mian Xiao. So Wide Guard here for the Mian Xiao is obviously an option. You could also go for Taunt. Mian Xiao is very speedy. Mian Xiao does get hit by the Fake Out. That doesn't feel great. That is the only Fake Out target right now for Raghav here. You could go Fake Out, break the Focus Sash, and then go for Terra Starstorm into that slot to make sure that you might get some damage in, or at least guarantee that that slot is either going down or not doing anything this turn. But that does leave this Shadow Rider with pretty much free reign to do what it wants. Notably, Astral Barrage cannot hit the Terrapagos, which is pretty big, but obviously it can go for other moves. James Baek is going for the Terastallization here. It is going to be that Mian Xiao going for the Terra Ghost, so Focus Sash at the very least won't be broken. Terra Starstorm also can't damage the Mian Xiao here. This Terra Ghost here feels really, really good. I mean, Mian Xiao can just do constant work into this Terrapagos. This is going to do some damage into the Incineroar. Shouldn't do too much, maybe about a third. It does about a quarter of Incineroar's HP, and Close Combat comes through into the Incineroar as well, taking it down before it can get any work done. This Terrapagos now, if it's not setting up with Substitute or Calm Mind, it's going to be doing absolutely nothing on this turn. We already know it didn't go for Protect, and Terra Starstorm is what comes out here. It was definitely going into the Mian Xiao spot, but now for Raghav, you're in a tricky position. We see the Rillaboom and the Ogerpon in the back here. You didn't get taunted on this turn, which you might have been expecting maybe from this Mian Xiao, which is a pretty big problem. Now that this Mian Xiao can click taunt into either spot here, potentially, Calyrex could go for Psychic, but also this close combat still is going to do a lot into the Ogerpon, and you can absolutely just go for close combat Astral Barrage again. You don't really feel too bad about that if you are James Baek with this Shadow Rider that can guarantee that this Ogerpon goes down essentially, but instead James withdraws the Mian Xiao, doesn't want to keep it around for too much, or doesn't want to keep it on the field for too much longer and lose that Focus Sash, and we see the Incineroar come in now, Intimidate onto that Ogerpon Cornerstone, and that gets Fake Out pressure back alive for James Baek. We do see the Terrestrialization coming out now for Raghav. We don't really see Ogerpon going for that Terrestrialization. It is instead going to be the Terapagos. Its Terra Shell is not broken, but that this does go ahead and give Raghav a little bit of an attack boost, and it guarantees some extra damage. While you don't get the Terra Shell ability anymore, you do get to get some work done. The Astral Barrage is going to come out. It is at a decent, it's not at +1 at all, but it is still a pretty decently strong attack. Ivy Cudgel is going to come through now onto the Calyrex. That's about a third of its HP, and Terra Starstorm now gets to make its presence known. This will hit both Pokemon since its Terra type is now Stellar, not Terra Normal, but it does not do very much. Mian Xiao would have taken super effective damage since it was terrestrialized, but since James was able to get that on out of there, that now puts Terapagos in a pretty rough position where it can get hit by Fake Out. It either needs to protect or just commit to taking damage. And this Ogerpon as well could go for a Spiky Shield here, make sure that it doesn't get pinched by a Fake Out, but at the same time, if Raghav goes for a double protect, that could mean James just swaps out here into Mian Xiao again, or into a fourth Pokemon in the back. Ogerpon is going to be the switch out here for Raghav. That's going to be Rillaboom coming in, setting up Grassy Terrain, and again, making Fake Out pressure well and known here for Raghav. Grassy Terrain as well lets Terapagos restore its health a little bit as is needed here. Will recover this Fake Out damage pretty cleanly on this turn. Astral Barrage now coming out. Still doesn't affect the Terapagos. Again, the benefits of being a normal type against a Shadow Rider Calyrex feels pretty good. Rillaboom takes about 60 damage there, about a quarter of its or a little under a third, a little over a quarter of its HP done. But now, if you are James, you have some options to consider. Rillaboom is certainly a threat. Grassy Glide can do quite a bit into the Calyrex. It might be able to KO from this range, honestly. But instead, just goes for the Fake Out. Make sure the Incineroar doesn't get too much action here. And Astral Barrage again for James Baek. Again, this Terapagos hasn't taken any damage. James has just been ignoring it this whole time. And quite frankly, it hasn't been able to do very much. Rillaboom won't go down to another Astral Barrage. We see the Terapagos go for a Calm Mind. Now it might actually be able to get some work done, mainly because of that special attack boost. The special defense boost honestly probably doesn't matter all that much. But Incineroar having to stay on the battlefield, especially with that flinch, does not feel very good. So I think Calyrex is 100% out of Grassy Glide range. Like, that's, I think, not even a question. But what does become a question is, will it go down now to another Terra Starstorm? The +1, I think, is the big thing there. So Astral Barrage coming through again. That's going to put Rillaboom incredibly low. It's not KO'd yet, but it is definitely not feeling very good. Terra Starstorm is going to come out. Incineroar should survive this without too much of an issue, even with that special attack boost. And Calyrex just barely survives. That Grassy Terrain can really be a thorn in the side of the trainer who sets it. Which, I mean, if that Shadow Rider goes down there, I mean, Ogerpon is no longer feeling very good. Obviously, Terapagos can just go for another Terra Starstorm as well as a Spiky Shield. But with this parting shot, Mian Xiao can just make another appearance on the field, force the Terapagos into a rough spot, and either guarantee that Shadow Rider won't go down on the next turn, or pose enough threat that this Terapagos might go down to a potential close combat. Now, if you are Raghav, you do deal super effective damage to this Mian Xiao. Obviously, the Fake Out pressure is really tough. Obviously, the Wide Guard pressure is also incredibly tough. And actually, Terapagos doesn't have any other damaging moves. So I think if you're James Baek, I think you can just go for a Wide Guard Astral Barrage. You ignore the Terapagos for essentially the rest of the game. And then what does Raghav do? I think that's the really big question now. Fake Out comes through, gets a little bit of damage onto the Terapagos. If you're James, going for a Psychic here would have been an insane call, but it is just the Astral Barrage. Playing it a little bit safe here. That does guarantee that the Ogerpon cannot go for the Spiky Shield on the next turn. So a very minimal damage output turn from both players here, but I think this definitely favors James Baek. Mian Xiao, again, close combat is pretty threatening under the Terrapagos. It doesn't go up to full health quite yet, but with the leftovers, it will. But the wide guard here is the main threat. If Shadow Rider is faster than Ogerpon, which again, it should be, it certainly should be, then that should be all she wrote for the Ogerpon at least, unless it wants to switch into the Rillaboom and try to come out again on the next turn. But this Terrapagos right now simply cannot do very much. Spiky Shield comes out again. If you're Raghav, your goal is to try to get the wide guard to come through multiple turns in a row so that it gets a less and less chance of working, but that does not work. Spiky Shield does not activate, and we get to see this Astral Barrage. It's going to take down the Ogerpon here pretty cleanly. Now it's going to be Rillaboom on the field. Mian Xiao is going to be faster than this Terrapagos, and it cannot get hit by Fake Out. It can get hit by Grassy Glide, but I don't think it'll go down here. Calm Mind is what comes out for the Terrapagos, anticipating the wide guard. The next turn here is where you're going to be trying to get that Terra Starstorm out again, which is going to be able to do a decent amount of damage, but this Shadow Rider now also has a +1 to its special attack. Rillaboom does get to come out onto the field again. Grassy Terrain or Grassy Glide is once again on the table, and again, it can do quite a lot. Rillaboom should be able to move first on this turn. It shouldn't be too difficult to manage, but the thing is, if you're Raghav, your Rillaboom is incredibly low. Your Terrapagos can't do anything to the opposing can't really do much to the opposing Calyrex, while Wide Guard is a continued presence on the field. And you still have to contend with the potential Incineroar in the back. Mian Xiao's Hookah Sash does get broken. It gets taken down a little bit below half, but Wide Guard came out once again. We see the Shadow Rider going for Astral Barrage one more time. The Rillaboom's going to go down here, and Terra Starstorm from this Terrapagos just isn't going to be able to do anything. James Baek has now opened it up to where a Psychic plus the close combat likely should just take out the Terrapagos here. Terra Starstorm comes through. It's not going to do anything into either of these Pokemon thanks to that Wide Guard, and even with this Terrassalization here, James Baek was just able to completely neutralize the Terrapagos, essentially ignore it, just deal with the Pokemon next to it, and win a really, really dominant game number one. Hasn't lost a Pokemon yet, and it looks like he won't. This Terrapagos simply cannot win. Again, Mian Xiao really making it look kind of silly there. And, shout out to the smart brain from James Baek. Like, that's a tough game to play if you are Raghav. Like, you brought what you think is going to be a pretty good strategy into this match, and then you don't take a single KO. You do get the Calyrex pretty low. I think, depends on if that is a roll or if that's the highest roll that you're going to get. That's one of those things that you can definitely go home and calc. But at the end of the day, the Calyrex staying alive, in part due to your own grassy terrain keeping it alive, feels really, really bad, because that just let James completely steamroll the rest of the game. And again, that Mian Xiao, that is a problem for Raghav to have to deal with. It has Taunt. It can stop Calm Mind, substitutes and protects from the Terrapagos. It has Close Combat that can do a lot of damage to it, and it has Wide Guard that just stops any damage from happening. It can Terra Ghost to make sure that your base form Terra Starstorm doesn't do anything. That really, really sucks to try to navigate, and I think that is now something that coming into this game number 2, you have to have an appropriate plan for. So let's go ahead and jump on into it, see if we see any adaptations from either player. James Baek brings the same two in the lead, and we see a little bit of, or is this a switch up? I think this is the same thing that Raghav brought in the previous game number 1. So you might be thinking, hey, you know what? Actually, no, it's not. It definitely was not Rillaboom to lead the way. I'll be honest, I don't remember what it was, but it was not Rillaboom. I don't believe. So, Grassy Terrain is alive and active now. Mian Xiao, actually, was it Rillaboom? Whatever. My memory's shot. We're going to focus on the here and now, baby. So, Calyrex still has a pretty good shot to get some damage out. Mian Xiao is pretty comfortable going for Terra Ghost here, although it still will take a decent amount of damage from potential Grassy Glide. But Terra Ghost, Taunt, Terra Ghost Wide Guard, Terra Ghost Fake Out, all those I think feel pretty good. Psychic comes through, and it does hit Terrapagos' Terra Shell, and we actually do not have any Terrasalizations from either player here. So we don't see any Fake Outs either. Calyrex moves first, breaks the Terra Shell on the Terrapagos. Close Combat now coming through, takes out the Terrapagos cleanly. James Baek completely switching up the strategy here, ignoring the Terrapagos in the previous game and taking it down immediately in this one with the previous conditioning that this Mian Xiao would go for the Terrasalization. Mian Xiao takes a Wood Hammer here and goes down to the Focus Sash. This means Rillaboom is going to take quite a lot of recoil damage as well. That makes it incredibly vulnerable in the next couple of turns. That is a huge play from James Baek. playing off of his game one strategy perfectly there. That feels really, really good if you're James, and really, really tough if you are Raghav. But at the same time, your Tropicos that didn't do much in the previous game is now off the field. You have Incineroar and Rillaboom, which both can do decent damage and can knock and put a decent amount of pressure onto both Pokemon here. We have Grassy Glide, which should be able to take out the Mienshao. You can knock off potentially into the Calyrex. You know Astral Barrage, even with Astral Barrage here with no +1s is still going to be able to do quite a bit. But James has a good answer here. Bringing the Incineroar and Intimidate down onto both of these physical attackers is going to feel pretty good. Even if we see a Grass Glide into the Incineroar now, that's not going to do much damage. Calyrex goes for the Protect to guarantee that it's not going to take any damage either this turn. And now for James Baek, you have the opportunity to go for Fake Out. Raghav will not be able to. It's a pretty gutsy call by Raghav there, going for the Fake Out into the Shadow Rider, anticipating that it is going to go for a Terastallization to avoid any major knockoff damage. But I respect it. I certainly respect it. We do see the U-turn for Raghav that is going to reveal the Ogerpon Cornerstone in the back. It does a little bit to James's Incineroar, but I think most of that, if not all, that's going to get healed up with this grassy terrain. Yeah, not quite all of it, but enough to certainly matter. Now, for Raghav, you have the Terra Ghost here. I don't know if that's something you want to click. This might be where you Terrastallize Ogerpon. You would lose the Sturdy, but you would get more damage out. We do see James going for the Terrastallization, though. No Fake Out present. It is a knockoff threat that the Calyrex will have to worry about, and it is that Terra Fairy. It will resist anything that the Incineroar has to throw at it this turn, and it doesn't mind too much what this Ogerpon does. Now that this Ogerpon Sturdy is broken, well, I think it should get healed up by the grassy terrain. And we do see the nasty plot coming out of the Shadow Rider now. That's going to get up to +2. We could potentially see the Parting Shot to try to counter it, and that is indeed what we see. And that does give Raghav the ability to bring out the Rillaboom and apply Fake Out pressure once again. Now, Shadow Rider can protect on the next turn. Incineroar might be going for a Parting Shot of its own, or potentially a Will-O-Wisp into the, or well, it already went for Fake Out, but like next turn could go for a Parting Shot or potentially a Will-O-Wisp of its own into the Quarterstone Ogerpon. Incineroar does have to worry about a potential Ivy Cudgel, just kind of hammering it into the dirt. But if you are James, the Incineroar going down might not be the worst thing in the world. You might get a clean switch into whatever your fourth Pokemon is, which we currently have no clue what it is. Mienshao coming back in wouldn't be the worst either. It is still pretty low, but you can get Fake Out off, and it's an incredibly speedy Pokemon that likes being up against Ogerpon and Incineroar both, quite frankly. That close combat can still do a ton of work. And we actually see James just outright withdrawing the Incineroar, mirroring what Raghav has done here and bringing back out the Mienshao. So if you're James, are you anticipating an attack into this spot, or are you hoping that all the damage is going into the Shadow Rider and you get to mitigate it and you have Mienshao on the field? Ivy Cudgel is going into the Mienshao. I don't know if you're too mad about that. Mienshao, obviously, it feels good being up against an Incineroar and an Ogerpon, but this does mean you can either bring Incineroar in and get another Intimidate off, or you get a clean switch into your fourth Pokemon. Again, Incineroar is back onto the field, which is pretty rough, so it can also go for Fake Out. Raghav can switch out the Ogerpon and bring Rillaboom back in, so it can also have Fake Out on the next turn. But James just brings out his own Incineroar once again, gets another Intimidate off onto both Pokemon. Both players now can go for Fake Out, and I'm not sure if we have seen which Incineroar is faster here. For Raghav doesn't want to bring the Incineroar back in yet, because that Grass Glide, or Grassy Terrain, as we just saw, has one turn left. So if he can avoid bringing Rillaboom in until after this turn, then you might be in a pretty good spot. James manually switches out the Incineroar again. We get to finally see the fourth Pokemon, and it is Urshifu. That's pretty big. It's going to resist anything that comes out that Raghav has. We use the Fake Out into the Shadow Rider here. Calyrex is going to flinch, and Ogerpon goes for the Ivy Cudgel. I think this is also going to be into Shadow Rider, but it does not do nearly enough damage. Those Intimidates really paying off. Now the grass is going to disappear from the battlefield. There is no Fake Out pressure for Raghav, and if you're James, you might be anticipating that Rillaboom makes its appearance back on the field. It's also this was a really good turn to get Urshifu out, because right now Raghav wants to try to get Rillaboom back in, and that is either going to have to happen likely through a manual switch or through a Pokemon going down. Raghav does not want to risk this Urshifu taking a ton of damage from Astral Barrage or from a close combat. Right now, James is heavily incentivized to just go for a close combat into the Incineroar, quite frankly. The Urshifu will take recoil damage, but close combat plus Astral Barrage, that'll break Ogerpon's Focus Sash. And yeah, so Raghav goes for the switch, not on the Incineroar, but on the Ogerpon. So Rillaboom makes its appearance back on the battlefield here. Grassy Terrain gets reset Astral Barrage plus Close Combat is something that I would expect. You could also see a Surging Strikes into the Rillaboom, again, because that would break, yeah, that would have broken Ogerpon's sturdy, as well as doing a decent amount of damage. This might bring Rillaboom down to about half, but Surging Strikes doesn't do a lot. Yeah, not quite half. I think it did about a total of a third, probably a little bit less. But Astral Barrage here could do quite a bit. Again, this is +2. We saw it did maybe a quarter of Rillaboom's health before, but with +2, it takes the Rillaboom down to just 21 HP. Incineroar now gets to go for Parting Shot. That does take Calyrex down a peg, and Ogerpon is going to get to come back out onto the battlefield. Urshifu is stuck in Surging Strikes right now. It's not going to be able to make any swaps for that. It doesn't mind going for Surging Strikes into Ogerpon here. And a really, really big thing is that if Rillaboom does not fake out into Urshifu, Urshifu is going to be able to KO Ogerpon or Incineroar, no matter what. Or I guess Rillaboom could also go for Grassy Glide in an attempt to KO the Urshifu, which might be enough. I'm not entirely certain. At the same time, okay, James just withdraws the Urshifu, wants to keep it up, doesn't want to risk losing it, and that's going to be Incineroar back in, getting an Intimidate out, back onto these two physical attackers, and this Calyrex likely should be able to survive both moves, but we could still see the Protect as well. I wouldn't be too surprised. Yeah, stopping the fake out, Incineroar comes back in, doesn't have any significant damage on it, and that Intimidate is going to be pretty big. Ivy Cudgel comes through. This is going to do quite a bit into the Incineroar, even at -1. Takes Incineroar down below half HP, and U-Turn comes out as well, chipping Incineroar down to about a third. That's going to bring Raghav's Incineroar back onto the battlefield. Fake out pressure still alive and well, but both players can certainly go for that. Now, fake out into the Ogerpon, I think, if you are James Baek, is not the worst move in the world. Could be worse, could be better. But this Calyrex is still feeling pretty good. And now that this Grassy Terrain is still in the battlefield, it can just keep healing up. We know it's not going to take a ton of damage. Now, a bold move from Raghav here would be to go for a Power Whip into the Incineroar slot. If there's an Urshifu coming in, that would just outright KO it if it hits. And you've seen James go for a lot of hard switches on that Incineroar slot, making sure that a ton of Intimidates can consistently come through. So taking down the Urshifu, that feels pretty good. Urshifu puts a ton of pressure on both Incineroar and Ogerpon, and right now with how low your Rillaboom is, it can probably just KO that as well. So being able to get Urshifu out of the equation is pretty nice. Fake out comes through though onto the Ogerpon. That's just going to get healed back up with, with Grassy Terrain, but Ogerpon does not have Sturdy right now. Okay, both Pokemon get put down to about half HP. Those previous Parting Shots feeling pretty good. Incineroar gets another Parting Shot off on the Shadow Rider here, not going for a fake out, which I believe the Incineroar just came in on this turn, didn't it? Yeah, it did. That is incredibly interesting. So Rillaboom is going to be coming back out onto the field here. It's at very, very low HP. Ogerpon is not feeling good either right now, and with Urshifu still being in the back, I like the call by Raghav to potentially try to get the Power Whip in there, but with Urshifu still being in the back, still being able to apply pressure, the Shadow Rider Calyrex can go for Protect once again. If you're Raghav, the question is, do you go for U-Turn on the Rillaboom one more time, get the Incineroar in, try to outpace these Protects? But the problem there is if you don't go for Fake Out, that might just end the game right here and now. So if you go for Fake Out into the Shadow Rider, if you go for Power Whip into the Incineroar, that's making the call that Calyrex is going to go for Protect and Incineroar is going to switch out. Again, we've seen James make a ton of switches, but James has called off those switches. It is Fake Out into the Calyrex. Calyrex isn't going to be able to move here, and Ivy Cudgel is going into Calyrex. We saw it didn't do a ton of damage before, and it does not do nearly enough. Again, Knockoff comes through onto the Rillaboom and takes it out. That's going to leave Incineroar and Ogerpon left to do the rest of the work. They're both on incredibly low HP. Urshifu is still in the back and feeling incredibly, incredibly powerful right now. Shadow Rider Calyrex can just go for Protect right now, and even if Incineroar goes down to some combination of moves, Shadow Rider Calyrex is still at a decent spot. It doesn't have any huge bonuses right now necessarily, but neither this Incineroar or Ogerpon can single-handedly deal with Urshifu in the back. What it would have to come down to is, for some reason, Raghav or James would have to target Incineroar first, but I don't think that there's a point where James will have to do that, and Raghav, seeing the writing on the wall with that Urshifu still alive and healthy in the back, concedes the top 16 match to James Baek here. James moving on to the top 8 of Vancouver. That was a pretty tight match, I'm not gonna lie. Like, that was James Baek had a really, really dominant game number 1. I like the adaptations that Raghav made in game number 2 in terms of strategy. Getting read like a book in that second game with Terapagos getting just absolutely destroyed with the fake out close combat feels really, really tough. That game, it makes the game much more difficult to win, but at the same time, it felt a lot closer. In terms of what the percentage chances are of Raghav being able to come back, that's really, really tough when you lose your restricted on the first turn like that. But Mian Xiao just is such a good answer into Terapagos, and a good answer into a lot of these restricted Pokemon. I feel like a very underexplored Pokemon. It was very quite popular back in the day. So I'm excited to see it doing well here. But we're gonna be looking at the top 8 tomorrow. So until next time, be safe, be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.